The people of Lagos woke up this morning to a heavy downpour that resulted in flood and traffic gridlock across the state, disrupting economic activities in Nigeria's commercial center. Reports show that places like Iyanoworo, Oshodi, Lekki, Ikeja, Egbeda, and Bagada were flooded this morning, with many unable to access their workplaces. The annual floods continue to pose significant challenges in Lagos as the city grapples with recurring impact of heavy rains. As the rainy season progresses, concerns are mounting over potential health hazards such as waterborne diseases and the displacement of vulnerable populations. Environmental experts are advocating exploring long-term solutions to address the root causes of the annual flooding, including urban expansion and inadequate waste management practices. On this episode of Nigeria Today, our focus is on mitigating flood disaster in Lagos State. Thanks for joining us. I am Victoria Clinton. Now, joining us in the studio to discuss mitigating flood impact in Lagos State is Dr. Chimere May Ohajinwa. She's an environmental toxicologist, a public health specialist, and also the team lead, Sea Circle Research. You're welcome to Nigeria Today.
Thank you.
Also joining us via Zoom from Lagos is our correspondent, Jennifer Igwe. Jennifer, it's good to have you on Nigeria Today.
Thank you.
So tell us, Jennifer, how bad is the situation in Lagos right now? How is everything now?
Right now, I'm sure that we still have many people stranded in different parts of the state. But you know, from the beginning of the year, there were signs that the rainfall this year won't be easy, in addition to the predictions by NIMET. And throughout last week, and even yesterday, we had downpour in Lagos. But very early this morning, the rainfall started and continued with many people stranded, and it disrupted activities in Lagos. And you know, Lagos is a commercial hub. So you can imagine people in traffic for a very long time. And we had situations where vehicles were submerged and many homes were flooded. It's a bad situation. But it's always like this when we have intense rainfall in Lagos. Don't forget that Lagos is a coastal state and a low-lying one. And perennial flooding in Lagos is something that has been there for decades. It happens every rainy season. The peak of the rainy season is when it's worse in Lagos, and any Lagosian would know. And with the effects of climate change, these extreme weather events that we're having, not just in Nigeria, but in all around the world, is also something we need to take seriously. Like what happened today in Lagos. In some parts where we had flooding, there are areas where we'll consider them as low-lying areas that are flood-prone. So in our strategic planning to manage rainfall, these areas like these are places where we need to have focus. Because each time, if you look at the history of Lagos, each time it rains, Oshodi, Iyanekwaja, and some parts of Lekki, in fact, we are even in Victoria Island, I can say that we're breathing a sigh of relief, because unlike in the past where it would be badly flooded, it didn't happen like that today. But of course, we had flooding in some parts of Victoria Island as well. But for those who live in Lekki and Agungi and all those areas, it was really bad. You definitely know that, yes, the rich also cry, because it wasn't just those who live in poor neighborhoods that are flood prone, but it's and also in highbrow areas. So it's a bad situation, and some people right now are still in traffic. because we have gridlock in some areas that have been badly affected by the flooding.
Oh, okay. Having said that, Jennifer, now we understand that areas like Abulo Oshunjo, Akowonjo area, Bagada, and Uroshoki Expressway were all flooded. Now, you rightly mentioned that yearly when we have those rains, certain areas are flooded. Were there areas this year that came like a surprise, to many Lagosians? Probably they were not really expecting flood in these areas. Were there areas like that?
No, because most parts of when it rains, when we have intense rainfall in Lagos, most parts of Lagos gets flooded. It's always like that. But the thing about it is that flash flood, that's how it works with flash floods. After a while, which is why the state government has released a statement asking people to be calm. But when the whole area is flooded, activities are crippled, and people do not even understand how they can move around, there's always cause for alarm. But the state government has assured people that they should be calm, that flash flood usually after some hours will drain off. And we are praying that is what will happen, because if after tomorrow we still have the kind of intensity of flooding that we have like today, then it calls for serious alarm. Because right now, the Lagos Lagoon, because of the intensity of rainfall, would have been overflowing. And so when that happens, it won't be easy for water to discharge from the drainage channels into the Lagos Lagoon. So that is why there's always flooding. And there's also the case of drainage channels. And the urban planning in Lagos is also something that is somehow a bit funny. And that is because you have gutters, for instance, that do not connect. You have some gutters that do not connect even to the canals. So when it rains, having routes for runoff water to flow into drainage channels, which is what it should be, becomes a problem. In some places, you see that even canals that have been cleared by the state government have been clogged. And one of the things I keep saying is that some of the actions that we do, we feel the impact when it rains. If you don't monitor drainage channels in your area and think it's just the government alone, it becomes a problem. And that is why even all around the world, community resilience strategies is what people are adopting for the effect of climate change. It should not be the government alone. Yes, the government has a part to play in ensuring we have well-structured drainage systems, because most of our drainage systems are poor. They're not well-structured. But even the ones that we have, people do not make any efforts to ensure that they are not clogged. They just think that it is something the government needs to do, forgetting that when it rains and your whole neighborhoods get flooded, it might not even be the officials that will be affected as much as you, which is why even in the statement the state government released today, they emphasize the fact that even though they are clearing drainage channels, that people should also endeavor to clean the ones in front of their homes, in front of their houses, and which is something sometimes we don't. Even today, there's a video that...
Jennifer, now tell us, for those that were affected by the flood, what is the state government? You just mentioned what the state government has done, over the time to ensure that this flood, doesn't happen. But then, what are they doing to, mitigate the impact of the flood now?
From the statements released by the state government, I mentioned it earlier that they have called for calm, that they're waiting for, because usually flash flood after some hours will drain off. That's what happens in most cases. But in situations where it doesn't, we don't have the water drain off, then that's where there's serious alarm. And we have that happen every year in many parts of the state. In fact, we're even, I would say that the state is even lucky that this is not even the period where we have the Ogu River busting its banks and compounding the situation. So the state government is, from what the statement they released today, they are intensifying efforts to see how they can clear up more drainage channels to ensure there's free flow. But they have to also wait for water to discharge into the lagoon in some areas. Then they have also advised people in low-lying areas. In fact, they have done that warning even before now, that those in low-lying areas should temporarily relocate for safety. Okay, and they are emphasizing that as well. And I know it is not easy for people to relocate, which is even a challenge. I mean, somebody who is very poor, you know.
Jennifer, thank you so much for that update. That was our correspondent from Lagos, Jennifer Igwe. Thank you very much. Now, we are being joined by Dr. Abdullahi Rigasa, an environmentalist and the former general manager, Kaduna State Environmental Authority, KEPA. You're welcome to Nigeria today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, back to you, Dr. Chimere. You heard what Jennifer said there about the flood, about the water, you know, and all of that. Now, and we have a case of the outbreak of cholera. How do we manage the situation right now? Of course, you know, the rains, flooding also exacerbates the cholera outbreak. Now, how do we manage the situation in such a way that we will not have more people affected by this disease?
All right, so this is really an important topic to talk about, because like Lagos just woke up and they're just seeing rains. But there are so many other measures that have been in place to mitigate some of these things from even happening. Now it has happened, what they can do is to adapt. And yes, flooding can contribute to important public health issues like cholera, dysentery, hepatitis. So it's not just cholera, you can even have other things that we didn't think about. So how it happens is that because it's flood, it can disrupt the sewage system, can overflow, you know, from people that have sewage system, depending on how good it is, it can overflow and then, you know, contaminate the water source. And remember, people are entering the water, so meaning that you can have skin disease from that. People are going to get cold, so we expect more people going to the hospital. So that means even the hospital is like overburdened right now. And then the water is going to be contaminated, the sanitation is impacted, so you have children, so that means they're likely to be getting cold this period. So one of the things they can do is to listen to the early warning signs, right? I'm sure that probably the NIMET and the Nigerian Hydrological Services, they will have been putting it out. People that are not listening to the news or listening to the weather forecast didn't know it's going to rain. And then suddenly there is rain. So it sounded like, oh, we just woke up this morning and it's raining. But there could have been some warning signs that this is going to happen. And if you're living in this particular place, please move. If you're building your house like this, please do this. Because this is almost like every year is happening. So it's not so much of surprise like that, because government have put out a lot of information to warn people about it. Yeah.
Okay. Now, Dr. Rigasa, just like Dr. May has mentioned, it's not a surprise. You know, like Jennifer rightly said, it's like it happens every year when there's rain. Certain areas in Lagos are flooded. Now, having said that, what long-term strategies, you know, should be adopted to prevent future, you know, flooding in areas like Lagos?
Yeah, for areas like Lagos, I believe that flood is no longer an accident, because if something happened and people are suffering, what it means is that some people are negligent of their own environmental responsibilities, and we have to hold them accountable, because we have federal institutions that have been releasing the early warnings as at when due. So it's no longer a surprise if you have a flash flood, you know, in your hands and you are unable to manage it. Government have provided funds, even if you don't have funding, as at the time the early warnings have been released. What it means that you need to activate your preparedness. And over time, as you mentioned, in the long term, we have to build in the mitigation and adaptations that are necessary, to solve this problem. Because government tend to think that, there is free funds, lying somewhere where they can tap and build these mitigations and adaptation. And it's not like that. Even at local and state level, there are certain, environmental responsibilities that the government at that level need to shoulder. The fact is that they have been negligent of these responsibilities. That is why year in, year out, we always talk about flooding. It shouldn't be flash flood. When you have early warning, it's no longer a disaster because you are being warned so that you can be well prepared. But if you are not prepared, then it means that you are negligent, and you need to account to your people why things like this keep on happening every 12 months.
Now, let's talk about how much of the, even if we talk about the flood, also look at the climate change, the effect of the climate change. How much of the climate change is affecting, our weather right now?
Oh, yes. I think it's not as much as other things, like infrastructure, planning, the population of people coming into Lagos. Now is encroaching into the natural areas. Places that are supposed to be forests that will help us absorb the water is being affected. When we build our roads, the paved roads, everything is tied. We are not even allowing water to seep in. So remember, the water table for Lagos is already very high. So when you just do a little digging to build borehole, you just get water. Now with the way we are building, with the infrastructure, we are plastering everywhere, so it's not getting space to permeate into the ground. So when there is this heavy intensity, it's difficult for the ground to just absorb it and recover and absorb more, compared to when it's raining slowly, then it has chance to absorb. When it's raining with that level of intensity and for a long time, it's not absorbing. So with little effort, the ground is already the absorption capacity is already reduced, then it runs off. And remember, we already cut down all the forests, the wetlands are affected, the infrastructure is not there, we are now expanding the drainage system. So it now looks like it's supposed to be an emergency. Meanwhile, it's not supposed to be an emergency because it's almost like it's happening every time. And so it's not really an emergency. So that's what I have to say.
No, but before I let you go, now we have the floods. What can people in these areas, in the flooded areas, be doing right now to prevent themselves from any kind of disease or any kind of danger right now?
Oh yeah, okay. So now it has happened. We're talking about mitigation. We're talking about adaptation, right? Not mitigation now, because mitigation is more like a long-term plan. Adaptation is short-term. What can we do now? So you're making sure the water you're drinking is good. You're making sure that even when you're building your house right now, what are the enforcement policies in place to make sure that people don't encroach? How can we remove people from the wetlands or the plainlands? Lagos is a coastal city already, and then if you are making sure, make sure where you're getting your water or your food is clean. If you are bringing from your house, make sure it's boiled. Some of those little things, don't put yourself in that contaminated water because you're going to have the other disease. If you have children, protect your children from cold. Have elderly people that are sick. You are putting extra care. So because now you're adapting, it's happening. How do I survive in this case? If you need to move away to higher ground where it doesn't happen, because it just happened today. You don't know whether it's going to rain again in 2 weeks' time or in 1 month, in 1 week time. So what's going to happen? Because you'll be expecting this between June and September every year. So this is just July. We're just starting July. So expect it again, July, August, September.
Okay, Dr. Rigasa, what are some of the innovative solutions, or will I say technologies that are being used globally to manage urban flooding that you think we should adopt here?
Yeah,
in the country?
I believe upgrading our building codes, that has been done in advanced societies. If you look at Saudi Arabia and the recent flood that happened in Dubai, for example, it's a well-built and well-planned city, but in spite of all this infrastructure and the money available to them, when it happened, it took virtually everybody by surprise. The thing is that over time, there are government institutions that have been collecting data. We need to utilize this data and think of what kind of mitigation do we need at local government level? What kind of mitigation do we need in our urban centers? And what kind of funding and strategies do we need at federal level? The solutions, they have to be homegrown. We can't be borrowing technologies for flood mitigation. And over time, what you see is that experts tend to believe that what is happening in other places can be replicated here. The fact is that our forefathers have been managing these flash flood events for thousands of years. What is wrong with us? We have adequate laws. And I tend to think that the problem is not that of funding. It's just that of abdication of our individual and collective environmental responsibilities. Let's obey the laws. Where we need to upgrade the building codes, let's upgrade, the building codes. Where some of these things are happening, the first thing that you need to think of is that the drains are grossly inadequate. Where the drainage system is not adequate, let's do something about that. You don't have to wait until something happened and then you start calling it an emergency. Of course, if you fail to act, what it means is that you have
act to fail.
Yes. So that is the way it goes. We can't be talking about this year in, year out, wasting a lot of public resources and precious time, putting people's health and environment at risk. Because once you have a flash flood event, the only thing you can do is to escape. What are the escape routes in your own area? Do you know them?
Still, before I let you go, Dr. Rigasa, I want you to talk more on the issue of being proactive, because it does appear that, of course, we have the information, like NIMET keeps giving us these predictions, and it's like it's falling on deaf ears, and at the end of the day, things just happen, and people are, running helter-skelter. So how important is it for us to, use these information that is readily available to act before any incidents like this?
Environmental action is better carried out or enforced at household and community level. Outside your own household and your community, people tend to be, people tend to be helpless. But within your own household, you can clear the drains surrounding your house. Within your community, you can clear the drains, within your community, and then you leave the rest to government, different levels of government. So what it means is that if you are able to clear the drains around your household and within your community, even if there's going to be a flash flood, the impact is going to be minimal and manageable. And the way it is happening in Lagos, what it means is that communities need to start thinking of emergency or contingency measure. When your house is flooded, where do you go to? How do you eat? If you are sick, where do you go? These are critical things that will help you when it occurs. If you don't know them now that your house is neat and unflooded, you are not likely to be listening to anybody when your house is flooded. So let's start thinking about that for now.
Well, thank you very much. With that, to draw the curtain of today's episode of Nigeria Today, a very big thank you to our guests. We had with us Dr. Chimere May Ohajinwa, an environmental toxicologist and public health expert, and also the team lead of Sea Circle Research. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you,
and coming. And also we had Dr. Abdullahi Rigasa, an environmentalist and former general manager, Kaduna State Environmental Authority.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. And we also had our senior correspondent there, Jennifer Igwe. Thank you so much for joining us, Jennifer.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for being part of the program. Don't forget, Nigeria Today airs every weekday at 7:30 p.m. on NTA News 24. You can also watch this episode and others on www.youtube.com/NTA News 24 Hub. I'm Eukaria Clinton. Goodbye.